Would you please be upstanding for the arrival of Her Excellency, Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner, Governor of Victoria.
Please be seated. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which Government House stands, the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and to Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. Your Excellency, I invite you to present the honours and awards in the Order of Australia. To be officers in the General Division, Gerard Thompson Ryan, for distinguished service to sports governance, to the tourism and hospitality industry, to business and to the community through philanthropic contributions. Emeritus Professor Virginia Perryman Studert, for distinguished service to veterinary science, to tertiary education, to animal disease research and comparative medicine. Dr. Brian Maxwell Tress, for distinguished service to neuroradiology medicine, to interventional and diagnostic radiography, and to the introduction of new imaging technologies in Australia. To be members in the General Division, Dr. Deborah Ann Gook, for significant service to women's health and to the reproductive biology and fertility as a clinician and researcher. Professor John Marshall O'Donnell, for significant service to orthopaedics as a clinician and mentor. James Charles Richards, for significant service to motorsports as a team owner and driver. Deepak Sangvi, for significant service to community health through governance and board roles. Angela Silvana Scafidi, for significant service to the community through philanthropic initiatives. Brendan Schwab, for significant service to professional sport as a lawyer and as an advocate for athletes' rights. Dr. Robert George Sterling, to be received by his wife, Associate Professor Rosemary Masterson, for significant service to respiratory oncology as a clinician and educator and to research. Dr. Joseph Chung Min Tam, for significant service to pediatric medicine and to rural health. Kathleen Margaret Toko, for significant service to mental health governance and awareness. Emeritus Professor Marcus Ramsey Wigan, for significant service to engineering, to road safety, and to tertiary education. Deirdre Ellen Wilmot, for significant service to business and to the Parliament of Western Australia. To receive the Australian Corrections Medal for Distinguished Corrections Service, Serena Frankie. Julie Teresa Marchant. Victoria Ryan. To receive the Medal of the Order of Australia in the General Division, Deborah Corman, for service to the community through a range of organisations. Anna Louise Mesger, for service to sports administration and to people with disability. Maxwell John Rodon Michelle, for service to the rail transport industry. Renton David Henderson Miller, for service to skateboarding. Emeritus Professor Chesney Ramesh Nagararaja, for service to tertiary education. Salaya Naylor, for service to the Tamil and Hindu communities of Victoria. Jane Marie Nigro, for service to community history. Michael Patrick Nolan, for service to the community through social welfare organisations. Kevin Daniel O'Callaghan, for service to the community of Craigieburn. Dr. Timothy Damien O'Hara, for service to science in the field of marine biology. The late Michael David O'Rourke, to be received by his daughter Shannon O'Rourke, for service to community sport. Lionel Hastings Parrott, for service to the community through a range of roles. Nicholas Alexander Pierce, for service to the community through the not-for-profit sector. Jeffrey Wayne Penny, for service to the communities of Goba and Terup Terup. Tony Pinata, for service to football. Ralph Lawrence Pelaire, for service to the baking industry. Gary Robert Pollard, for service to the community of Yea. Charles Leslie Povey, for service to the community through a range of organisations. Kevin William Quigley, for service to the community through a range of organisations. Susan Lorraine Rainey, for service to Squash. William George Rabula, for service to the community of Geelong. Charles Conrad Rees, for service to the community in a range of roles and organisations. Barry William Richards, for service to the welfare of veterans. Graham Keith Robb, for service to the community through emergency response organisations. Darrell James Ryan, for service to veterans and their families. Judith Jenny Schiff, for service to the Jewish community of Victoria. Peter George Seaman, for service to the community through a range of roles. Zainab Sertel, for service to the Islamic community of Victoria. Gordon Murray Simpson, for service to the community of Alexandra. Dr. Paul Jeffrey Sinclair, for service to conservation and to cricket. John Slutskin, for service to the Jewish community of Melbourne and to hockey. The late Jacobus Hubertus Smits, to be received by his daughter, Megan Myers, for service to the community of Port Fairy. Ivan William Standen, for service to the welfare of veterans. Dr. Judy Tang, for service to mental health, to cultural diversity, to equality, and to aging. The Reverend John Waldron Taylor, for service to the community through a range of organisations. William Jeffrey Taylor, for service to the community through a range of roles. Leo John Tellerson, for service to the community of the Berwickshire. Jeffrey Noble Thompson, for service to the communities of Shepperton and Tallygarupna. Wendy Thorpe, for service to the financial sector. Ferruccio Tonini, for service to nursing. Richard John Trigg, for service to youth and to the community. Graham Sidney Turner, for service to the community of the Gippsland region. Adrian Lee Tyler, for service to the communities of Rupianiup and the Yarriambiack Shire. Dr. Colin George Walker, for service to avian veterinary science and to pigeon racing. Dr. Paul Andrew Waters, for service to tertiary education. Christine Sarah Welsh, for service to the community through emergency response organisations. Nigel Murray Wilson, for service to the community through a range of organisations. Lorraine Merle Woodman, for service to cricket and to the community. To receive the Conspicuous Service Medal, Leading Seaman Jack Murray Schultz, for meritorious devotion to duty in the field of naval technical training. Lieutenant Commander Scott James Shipton, for meritorious devotion to duty as the Command Warrant Officer of the Royal Australian Navy Recruit School and HMAS Cerberus. Lieutenant Perry Ann True, for meritorious devotion to duty as the Maritime Human Resources Officer, HMAS Cerberus. To receive the Commendation for Gallantry, the late Angelo Basil Natoli, to be received by his son, Paul Natoli, for acts of gallantry in action on the 8th of December 1943, while operating on the Huon Peninsula, New Guinea, as part of 8th Section 15 Platoon of the 29th 46th Australian Infantry Battalion. Colonel Geoffrey Charles Scarden, for acts of gallantry in action in August 1964. Please join Her Excellency in congratulating all today's recipients. Your Excellency, I now invite you to address us.
Captain Ben Esler, Senior Naval Officer for Victoria. Fred Harrington, Chair, the Order of Australia Association Victoria Branch. Distinguished guests, it's wonderful to see you all here this afternoon. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Boonwurrung and the Wurundjeri people of the Eastern Kulin Nations, and pay my respect to their elders, past and present, and recognise any Aboriginal elders who are with us this afternoon. Well, these lands have supported countless generations And yet our nation, which is a modern nation, the Commonwealth of Australia, is younger than this ballroom that we're gathered in this afternoon. As you know, Australia found its beginnings as Australia, the nation, on the first day of 1901. And this Saturday will mark exactly 125 years since the first National Parliament was held in the Royal Exhibition Buildings in Carlton. And at that time, this house was, for a period, and from that date, the house of the first Governor-General and then the first Governors-General of Australia. And this ballroom is over 150 years old. So we are a comparatively young and modern nation. That meeting in the Royal Exhibition Buildings was immortalised in Tom Roberts' famous painting, The Big Picture. And the scene that day was described by the Argus as a gathering of free people, hopeful people, courageous people, entrusted with the working out of their own destiny and rejoicing in their liberty. It was in fact not until 1949 that Australian citizenship was officially established for the people of this land, though not all people of this land gained Australian citizenship at that time. And it's just over 5 decades since an Australian honours system, which has just been in evidence today, was created to recognise the contributions of Australia. And that honours system is, of course, what brings us here today. But the anniversary we're about to celebrate, the anniversary of the birth of our national democracy, is worth reflecting on. It was at the time a moment of great ceremony and fanfare. Yet the constitution that brought this nation into being is not distinguished by its bold rhetoric. Within it we find no grand declaration of rights, no manifesto proclaiming our shared values as a people. That was left to us to determine. And you could argue that our national identity is still unfurling today. It is a topic that continues to be part of our conversations, and one that can seem difficult to define in words alone. The readiness of some to declare what is un-Australian is a frequent and not necessarily happy impulse, because it often turns us from what brings us together. The best way to understand the values that we hold in common is probably less by talking about them, but rather by experiencing them. Earlier this year, Victorians faced the perils of fire and flood, not new perils to this state. They threatened lives and livelihoods right across the state. As I've visited affected communities, the ideals that unite us as a people are palpable. I felt them when I was meeting with Blaze Aid volunteers in Euroa. They'd just returned from a day of rebuilding fences for a farmer whose hands had been burnt by the fire. I felt them as I entered the public hall at Yark, and Yark is a tiny community, but that hall had been transformed into a donation centre by the residents who were looking to support their neighbours who'd lost everything. And I felt those values when I was speaking to the owners of the general store in Wye River, who, after having their business gutted by flash flooding, awoke the next day to find people of all ages armed with shovels to dig through the layers of mud. Perhaps due to many decades of facing such emergencies, as Australians we're particularly good at banding together during trying times. But it would be incorrect to assume we're only united in hardship. We may see what we share so clearly in times of crisis, But our instincts for fairness, for treating people equally, do not emerge from thin air. They thrive quietly but constantly across all sections of our society. The contributions we've acknowledged today are indeed the experience and the testament to that fact. We've seen people recognised for their deep commitment over many decades in their professional careers or in their volunteer service, and often in both. We've seen people recognised for successfully chasing a dream to give back to their communities. We've seen people recognised for acts of extraordinary courage, people recognised for acts of extraordinary service. All these recognitions go much further in exploring and expressing our shared values than words perhaps ever could. In celebrating what we do and what we have done through our Australian honours system, we help both to show ourselves what it is that we value, and we find a way, therefore, to nurture those values and to preserve them for generations to come. There is no one document prescribing us to act in the ways we've seen to one another. And we know no nation is perfect. There are always things that we wish we had done better. But we have good reason to be proud of the society we've built together. We've built it together, we've built it ourselves. And we are continuing to build it, and we are building it within a strong democratic framework. We remain free, hopeful, and courageous people. We continue to rejoice in our liberty as we work out our shared destiny. 125 years ago, we were offered by the federation we had forged the promise of the opportunities that are before us and the freedoms of the nation we occupy now. Today, we celebrate the work of those who've done much to secure it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. If you are able to do so, would you please stand and join in the singing of the first verse of the national anthem and remain standing for the departure of the Governor. Thank you.
That concludes official proceedings for today. The State Apartments will now be open for your viewing. On behalf of the Governor, I invite you to stay and to enjoy the hospitality of Government House. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.